Hello, everyone. You are back at the Speakers Bureau, St. Lucie County Public Schools Speakers Bureau, and we welcome you to the program, and we thank you for turning and tuning us in. For those of you that do not know what the Speakers Bureau is all about, we ask guest speakers to come on the air and to go into the schools to encourage and inspire and motivate our students to be the best that they can be. Not only our students, but we want our community also to be able to be exposed to these speakers because they open up and share their life story. They're very successful people, and each of us want to know what it took to get over the hurdles and the challenges that each and every one of us go through in life. So today we have Dr. Jonathan Prince, and he is the Deputy Superintendent of Schools here in St. Lucie County, and is always willing to come and share his story with us. And so we thank you very much, Dr. Prince, for attending.
Good morning.
And being our speaker for today.
Well, I appreciate the welcome.
Now, I want to start out by asking you a question. What does your title entails? What is it that you do as your job duties in St. Lucie County Public Schools as the Deputy Superintendent?
Well, as the Deputy Superintendent, I kind of do a little bit everything. My job primarily is my role is to improve student achievement. So I kind of orchestrate the superintendent's mission in all of our public schools and coordinate all of our efforts to improve student achievement. I work with our executive directors, who are principal supervisors, to oversee all of our schools and also implement strategies that we think will improve student achievement. I'm very happy to say that we've got the 5th highest graduation rate in the state, and we've had historical success over the last few years, and I credit that to a visionary superintendent, and I'm just proud to serve and be here in St. Lucie Public Schools.
Thank you so much, Dr. Prince. And we also credit you as well for our success. You have been a very important part of the transformation here in St. Lucie County Public Schools, and we thank you, we sincerely do, in behalf of each and every one of our students. You are directly under the superintendent.
Yes,
you did
ma'am.
not mention that,
Yes.
I don't believe.
Yes.
But it would be yourself and then, of course, the superintendent.
Right.
And so you have a very important position in our school system. And you know, what's the wonderful thing about the Speakers Bureau is that we have, because I think of you as, and you are very extremely successful in your life. And so to be able to share with people that it's not like you had a silver spoon put in your mouth, you wasn't born into a family of influential family and so forth. And you're open and sharing your life story so that others can say, oh, okay, wow, you know, they can compare type of thing and say, well, you know, if he can do this and go through this experience and that one, surely I can be successful as he is. So thank you again for coming. Share with us what it's like growing up as a kid, what it was like for you.
Well, I grew up in Northwest Florida, in the Panhandle area, Fort Walton Beach, and I grew up with 7 brothers and sisters, and you know, my mother and father were uneducated, and in fact, I was the only one that ended up going to college. But we grew up poor. We had, you know, when you grow up poor, I don't think you realize you grow up poor. You know, as you become you know, more successful and you have things, you reflect back on your life and you realize that you had nothing. We had no central air. We didn't have air conditioning. We grew up in an old Florida house. We shared bedrooms. And, you know, I remember, you know, at 9 or 10 years old, I was already working and cutting grass in the neighborhood. I'd go to neighbors and offer to cut their grass for money. And back in the day, you could probably remember this. You know, when you had Coke bottles, you could go and collect Coke bottles.
I remember those
yes,
days.
yeah, and you turn those in. You turn those into the grocery stores, and they'd give you money for them. So we all contributed money to our household, and that was an expectation of my parents that whatever we earned, we gave part of that to them to try to help pay the bills. So we were a very, very poor family.
So having 6 siblings. Where do you come in? 7 children total. I'm
the 4th out of 7. So I
Okay,
kind of,
kinda in the middle.
yes, we had 3 boys and 4 girls.
Okay.
So right in the middle.
And you mentioned some things about you didn't know you were poor,
Yeah.
but you were poor.
Yes,
You know,
yes,
when you-
yes,
when-
yeah, yeah.
When you reflect now
Yeah.
on your childhood, and I was just thinking today how blessed we truly are,
Mhm.
and especially here in America, and the
Right.
opportunities that we have
Absolutely.
here. No matter what type of environment you grew up in or what you went through, you here in this country, if you work hard enough
Absolutely.
and you stay focused, you can become successful now. And
Sure.
many people gave their lives so that we could have what we have today in this country. And we need to be grateful and appreciative, and then use what has been built, you know, and build upon that, the
Right.
foundation
Absolutely.
of so many people that have helped to make this country great. So, what kind of challenges did you have as
Well,
growing up?
I think, growing up, one of the biggest challenges that I faced is I had a very abusive household. My father was a hard man. I can remember, and I've shared this story with you, back in 2002. I hadn't talked to my father in a long time since I left the house, and I very rarely went back after I went to college. But I got a call, and he was in hospice, and he was going to pass. And I drove home to see him and pay my respects, and my family was there. And he was having all these happy memories of our childhood, and I was looking around at my siblings, and just like, these were not my memories, and they weren't theirs either. We remembered my first memory of my father was when I was 3.5, 4 years old, and I stayed up too late. And he came in and saw me watching the television, and I had to pick out a belt from his belt rack that he whipped me with, and that was one of many whippings for things that were just minor, like kid things that you do. If you broke a glass, you were going to get beaten for it. I mean,
Yeah.
those are the kind of things. So you grow up in that kind of fear, and that impacted my life to such an extent. And I can remember also, the day before he passed, he told all of his kids that he loved them, and that was striking to me because he'd never said that to me before.
Okay.
And I said that, either you become your parents, or you reject that life and you become different. And I knew that I never wanted to be my father. I never wanted to be that person. So, with my own children, I rejected the way we were raised. I tell my kids I love them every day. I don't beat
Just the
my kids.
opposite,
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's not the kind of parent that I am, and those are not the values that I have. So I think that was probably the most impactful relationship. And actually, in many instances, I wouldn't want to relive that or have my children experience that. But for me, it was a life-altering in the sense that it created a pathway for me that I did not want to be that, and I rejected that whole life, and that drove me to get an education and continue my education and have a family and do things the right way.
And I can certainly relate to that in my own life, because it was a very abusive situation growing up. And you come to that point as a person. Do I want to be like this? Do I want this pattern to follow me? Or do I want to be totally opposite? And I went through the same thing with the total opposite
Right.
of my parents, and it made sure that my kids had what I did not have.
Sure.
And many times we talk about we want our kids to have more than we had. And many of us overspend even
Right.
financially on our children
Absolutely.
so they can have the things we did not have. But I think emotionally and socially it's very important that we also do that.
Sure.
Make sure they have what we did not have if we didn't have that type of
Well,
loving home.
I can remember very vividly, when I was talking about trying to go to college, him telling me that college was a waste of time. And I needed to keep my job because I did work for a produce company at the time, and I was I'd get out of school and then I'd go to work, and I drove a truck, of all things. And he would say, you know, that's a waste of time. You're going to waste your life, and especially because I wanted to be a teacher too.
Wow.
That was even, you know, worse. Why would you waste your time on something like that? Because that was just the values in our household, that they didn't value education, and that's not. I mean, I did.
Well, you mentioned you're the first one
Yes.
out of 7 children to graduate from college.
Yes.
Are you the only one, or did others follow suit after?
No, I was the only one.
The only one. Wow.
The only one. Yeah.
So we can make those decisions and move forward in spite of
Absolutely.
our environment and be very successful. That's one thing that you've just told us, that in your own life, that you made a certain decision regardless of your circumstance. And because of that decision, today you have a doctorate degree.
Yes.
So we're very proud of you with that.
Well, thank you.
and that
I'm proud of
accomplishment.
myself.
So you mentioned, did you have a mentor in your life? I
yeah,
mean, what else? What
yes.
was the motivation? Was it just you, or was there other people that?
Well,
what happened?
yeah, I the person, you talk about people that profoundly impact your life. You know, I had someone in my life that changed my life, and that was a teacher. You know, when I was in the 8th grade, 9th grade, I had a Mr. Woolwine who was my science teacher. And Mr. Woolwine was the coolest guy if you've ever seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory with Gene Wilder. Okay, he looked just like Gene Wilder with the crazy hair, and he had a great backstory. He was he went to Vietnam, and he was a helicopter pilot, and just had a really cool story. And he wore a white coat, and he carried a yardstick, and I just thought he was the coolest guy. And he was the sponsor of the chess club. And at the time, I was talking about my relationship with my father. My father played chess, and I wanted to learn chess, maybe to somehow build a relationship with my father. And I was not going to join the chess club because I was a jock, and I thought I was really cool, and chess was for nerds, that kind of thing. So I asked Mr. Woolwine, would you, teach me how to play, but I don't want to join the chess club. And he stayed after school every day teaching me how to play chess, and I ended up joining the chess club, and I won a county chess tournament. And what was interesting about him is that's who I emulated, and because of him I wanted to be a teacher, and I became a science teacher just like him, and I wore a white lab coat, and I carried a yardstick, and I really modeled how I did things after that remembrance of that experience with him. And to come full circle with Mr. Woolwine, I became a teacher, then I became a principal. And when I became a principal of an elementary school, and this is in 2003, I looked him up. And I drove near my hometown, and he was an assistant principal in Niceville, Florida. And I literally went into his office and asked the secretary, could I see Mr. Woolwine? And she said, she radioed him. And he came in, and I was sitting in his office, and I stood up and I said, Mr. Woolwine, you remember me? And said my name, and he looks at me and he says, no. And my heart was broken. I mean, I was like, I idolized this man. I'm thinking this is going to be, a big hug or whatever. I haven't seen this man in years. And, at that moment, I realized what made Mr. Woolwine special is because he made every kid feel like I felt. Every kid felt special.
Yes.
And that's the talent of a true teacher, is that every kid in their class feels like that you're the most important person in the world.
Yeah.
And after telling Mr. Woolwine, I brought up the chess, then he's like, oh, Johnny, yes, I remember you. And we talked and but I told him what a profound impact he had on my life. And I made him cry. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And I know our teachers throughout the entire district, I know that they can relate with that as far as the importance of every child feeling special.
Yes.
Within their classroom. I mean, that alone, look at what it did in your life. He became your mentor simply because he made you feel that you were special and important in his life.
And it gave me a mission. That experience with him gave me a mission. I wanted to impact people the way he did me. That was what the gift he gave me.
Wow. And I've heard that, and I'm sure our teachers have heard that, but I've heard that with my husband and I being in this community and working
Yeah.
with children for so long. They're now in their 30s, their 40s,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I mean, their 40s.
I know,
And we're still
I know.
calling them our children
Yes.
because we were a big part in their life. And that is very important, that children believe that they are extremely important
Yes,
to adults.
absolutely.
And that makes an incredible difference as far as them opening up and learning
Sure.
and wanting to be like that individual person,
Yeah.
like your story. Now, this month is Anti-Bullying Month. And I know that you have a story that really influenced your life
Yes,
and stays with you today,
sure.
that deals with bullying and the importance of not, and the importance of speaking up. So please
Sure.
share with us that experience you had as a child.
Well, it was a profound experience in my life, and it's a story I tell in all embarrassment, because of a decision I made. I had a boy that moved into our neighborhood, and we were a very closed community. I mean, if we had whites and blacks, but we were all Southern Baptists. You know, I mean, that was just the way it was back then. And you know, we went to Southern Baptist Church every Sunday, and we had a boy moving into the community that was a different, you know, religion. And he practiced a different religion, and at school he was made fun of, and he was ostracized because of the way he dressed and the way he acted, and he was very transparent with his religion. He didn't hide it. And his name was Dennis. And at lunchtime, we volunteered together because I got free rolls if I volunteered to help clean up the cafeteria, and I was hungry all the time. So I probably need to be less hungry with my tummy. But we volunteered together, and I built a friendship with Dennis, and I liked him, and he was a good kid, and but I wouldn't tell anybody he was my friend. It was like a secret friendship, and because I didn't want people to judge me based on my friendship with Dennis. And one day I rode my bike to school every day, and I was riding my bike, and I had to cross a bridge every day on the way home. And as I was riding my bike, I could see in the distance four of my good friends, were two of them, Mark and Tommy, had Dennis on the ground, and Clark and Sean had his bike, and they were lifting it, and they were going to throw it over the bridge. And I can remember thinking to myself, and it was like, just, you know, like that, you know, what do I do? You know, and I could have stopped it, and I could have driven up and put a stop to it. And I made a decision that affects me today. I crossed the street, and I drove on the other side of the bridge, and I drove right past it. And as I was looking over at Dennis on the ground, we locked eyes, and he could see me doing nothing. And it broke my heart, and I did nothing, and I just drove home, and I saw them throw that bike over the bridge, and I felt awful. I mean, I felt so bad. I mean, I cried about it. I felt terrible about it. And later that day, my brother and I fished the bike out of the water, and we left it on Dennis's front porch. And a few weeks later, Dennis moved. And to this day, I remember that like it was yesterday. And I said to myself, at that point, if I saw something happening that was wrong, I always took a stand and put a stop to it. And I said to myself, I'll never make that wrong decision again. You know, you only learn from your mistakes, and you only learn from failure. And fortunately for me, you know, the failures I've had in my life, I've learned every lesson that I could learn to not make the same mistake again. So whenever I see somebody being bullied or somebody being mistreated or picked on, you know, I stand up to that person, and I'm going to put a stop to it. You know, even if it means, you know, putting myself in harm's way, I always try to do the right thing.
Yeah, so that's what a story, and you did learn from that, and I think that's another key to success.
Yeah.
We do make mistakes in life. We do have areas and challenges that we do not pass the test.
Sure.
But if we can learn from our mistakes, if we can learn from not passing the test, and what can we do different,
Right.
then we move forward in life rather than stay in the same place.
Sure.
So that's a very important lesson. Now, we as a school district, we are no tolerance
No.
with bullying. We did our proclamation at our last
Absolutely.
school board meeting, and if I'm, involved and called on because of bullying with the child, all of my hair just goes straight right up.
Yeah.
You know, I also have some bullying experiences that I would be able to share that changed my life and made me more of an advocate.
Sure.
So sometimes it's what you go through.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
become more of an advocate then, and
Yeah.
it changes you for the better.
Sure.
Especially when you're open enough to say, I want to be improved.
Right.
And things do happen in life that you may have to just kind of wake up one day and say, no more.
Absolutely.
I want to improve. I'm going to be better. I'm going to do better. And that takes us on to the path of success. Now, give us a recipe for success. I did get
Yeah.
a couple of things
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in your story that I was able to bring out, but you give us your recipe. What do you think it takes for one to become successful?
Well, I think, first of all, the most important thing.
And what is success? Tell us that.
Well, I think success is in your mind. I think ultimately you have to be happy with wherever you're at, and you have to like yourself and be happy with yourself. And success is really defined by what's inside you. It's not defined by a title. It's not defined by how much
Good.
money you make. It's really defined. I define my success as being a good father and a good parent, and a good family person. I mean, that's where I find my success. I've been successful in the education industry because I care about kids, and I like what I do, and I feel a lot of personal satisfaction when kids succeed, and that makes me feel successful. But I would say if I was going to say one thing that's the most important thing to a person's success, and that's resiliency. Not giving up. Being, and when I say resilient, that means life is going to throw you punches, and you're going to get tossed around in the ocean, but ultimately you've got to make a decision to keep swimming and stay upright and keep going and keep pushing forward and learn from your mistakes and correct them and move on. And the people that do that find success, and also the most important thing as a leader is that when you make mistakes, own up to them. You don't get ahead by walking on other people, or throwing other people under the bus. When we fail or we don't do well, then I've always accepted responsibility, and then we come up with a plan to move on and correct whatever mistakes were made and move on. So I think that's the recipe that I have for success, is just resilience, and ultimately is being happy with who you are and by the way you treat people.
So true, so true. Well, Dr. Prince, once again, you've come and you've shared your life, and I've opened up to help someone else and to teach someone else some valuable lessons through your own story. And we appreciate that so much. What does it mean to you to look at someone and say, that's a great person? What does it mean to be great to you?
Well, I always look up to people that treat other people well. I mean, all of my, role models. I teach at FAU. People that want to be assistant principals and principals.
Okay.
I teach future leaders or whatever. And I always say sometimes people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. Okay, and it's the most important lesson that I always learn. People don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. And I always tell the people that I'm teaching class to is that you may work for somebody that you don't respect, or they don't treat people the way you want, or you may work for somebody you really love and that you want to model those people. But you'll learn just as many lessons from how not to do something as you will how to do something, because every journey in life is a lesson. And I always tell my students, If you're working in an unhappy situation, then learn from it. Because when you get an opportunity to be a leader, remember all those negative lessons, just the same lessons I learned in my childhood, and don't make those mistakes. Treat people well. Treat people with respect and courtesy and kindness in whatever walk of life. And, you know, my boss always says, the superintendent, you know, he who angers me controls me. And I've never seen him angry, you know, because, you know, he takes things, and he's one of my role models as to how to handle situations, even if they frustrate you. It's always about solutions. It's not about complaining.
Right.
You know,
right.
we have to shift our thinking
Finding
into
fault or anything
absolutely.
like that. It's about solutions.
Absolutely. So that's what I perceive as someone who's a great person, is really about, you know, how you treat people. And if you treat people good, then that shows greatness to me.
Again, this is Anti-Bullying Month, and there are several different ways that one can bully another.
Oh, absolutely.
We have cyberbullying, which is our media, through our technology and so forth. We have physical bullying, which you put your hands on
Yeah.
someone. We have verbal bullying,
Sure.
where you call people names, and then of course we have social bullying, where you don't allow one to be a part of the group.
Right.
And these are different types of bullying that it doesn't always have to be physical. And we want our young people and our children to know, our students to know, that bullying is just not the right thing to do. Not only does it cause harm to others, but eventually I'm sure it will catch up with the one that is actually the bully.
Yeah, and I know we're you know, running out of time, but the social media stuff is so prevalent right now, because they can bully from a distance.
Yes.
You know, and that's so prevalent in our society, and that's one thing I've tried to teach my children, is that, you know, social media is a very powerful medium, and it hurts just like words, and it hurts just like, you know, the physical side.
Yes, it does.
And also, whatever you put out there is permanent when you put it out on social media.
It's true.
So our kids really need to remember that.
They do, yes. So thank you again for coming to the Speakers
It's a
Bureau.
pleasure. It's been my pleasure.
We enjoy your story every time you tell it. You have some things in there that can change a person's life if they just follow the course and the right path. And so again, we appreciate you coming. Thank you, Dr. Prince, for always
Dr.
being
Mills,
there.
it's always a pleasure. You know, I'm always up and inspired by you, and I always appreciate the opportunity to share my story. And anytime you call, you know, I'm always there.
And I'm inspired by you as well. So
I
we
appreciate
inspire
it.
one another.
There you go.
Like the professor.
I want to interview you sometime. That's what I want.
Maybe we'll switch it around one time.
We'll switch it. I'll be in that chair.
I'll be
You
in the
come in
hot
this chair.
seat.
That's right. And I'll ask all the questions.
I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, and then I'm going to interview Dr. Mills. I think
Okay.
that'd be fun.
I think I would like that very much. We'll
Yes.
see what happens
All
in the
right.
future. Again, thank you for joining the Speakers Bureau. We're so glad you were able to come and be a part of this. We hope that we have said something that have made a difference in your life, because we want everyone in St. Lucie County and in our state and in our country and in our world, especially our children, to be successful. Have a great day.